Hey everybody, welcome back to the Financial Freedom Show. My name is Rob Berger. Tonight is I guess, special live session where we're going to I call it new retirement sort of working session. New Retirement's the retirement planning software that I use. They're also a sponsor of the show, although they don't sponsor any specific video. And I don't even think they know I'm doing this. That's okay. But it's the retirement planning software I use. There are other good ones. I already see the thumbs up. Thank you, Steve, Jeff. But the point I was trying to make is that we're going to look at the software, but it always leads to sort of broader questions about retirement planning. So as you leave questions in the chat, and please just put @Rob Berger so I know you're talking to me rather than having a conversation with someone else in the chat, which is perfectly fine. Sometimes we go beyond just the software. So what I want to do, I've got a couple of questions that folks emailed me. I will start there. And I see some questions already in the chat, so I'll get to those. One thing I thought I'd just show you very quickly, and many of you probably know this. This is a demo account. This is not my actual, I use New Retirement. I have two accounts. So this is a made up plan. It's 99%. I mean, if you're going to make up a plan, why not have 99% chance of success? I mean, am I right? Who wants to make up a plan and have like a 15% chance of success? So they've had two big improvements or additions, I guess. The first, as you may know, you can now look at things in today's dollars or future dollars. You can toggle it there. So if we look at future dollars here, this account, they end up with, if we assume the same returns every year, and I think I'm in the average assumptions, they end up with 14 million, but that's in future dollars. In today's dollars, it's only 5.7. And that's from, in this case, today, 2024, of course, to this end of plan is 2054, so 30 years. But anyway, they've added this. This has been a feature that's been requested for a very long time. They added that. The other thing they did was then they added, why can't I find it? What's called financial wellness here on the left side. It's even in beta. And what this does is it evaluates your plan for you, and it says, okay, these things you're doing well, you got that all figured out. As an example, in this plan, there is no debt. So, they're doing great on the debt and so forth. And you can see different categories. But then they say, okay, you're making progress, but you're not done. And you could dig into the reasons for each of these. I don't know why they say progressing. Action item. I wonder if I haven't selected, I may not have, in New Retirement, when it comes to long-term care, you go to expenses here in healthcare, and then they have a separate section for long-term care. I'm not quite sure what they want me to do here. I've got planned to use up savings. Oh, and then try to qualify for baseline care. I don't know what else they would have me do. I'm curious if I change this to, I don't recall if in this plan they own a home, but in my plan, my actual plan, I select, my plan is to use home equity. If I select that, does it change the, again, I don't even know that I own a house in this. Do I own a house? No, I'm renting for $1 a month. In any event, let's just see what that does. Oh yeah, no, I'm excellent. See, nice. I guess it doesn't check to see whether I actually own a home, but that's not the kind of mistake you're going to make in a plan. I don't think. Mistakenly believe you own a home when you don't. Anyway, and then vulnerable. Yeah, so I didn't go through the estate planning documents for this at all. So yeah. And then Roth conversion opportunities for maximizing estate value, right? So, and we'll actually talk about that, but which plan am I in? I wonder if that does that off the base plan. Does it change? Oh, it's interesting. It changes based on which plan you've selected, because I've got a couple alternate scenarios. So it does change. So because when I changed it, I hadn't changed the long-term care settings for this other scenario. So that's good. Anyway, those are the two big changes or additions. I know they're working on more. One of the things that they really need to do is improve the way they account for dividends in a taxable account. And I don't like the way it's set up. I don't think they like the way it's set up right now. I think they're going to, I don't know. I don't have any idea of when, but I know they're working on something. So with that, let me answer a few questions that were emailed to me, and then I'll turn to your question. Oh, men's basketball. I was screaming and yelling. I couldn't sit down. I'm pacing in the family room. It's a good thing I was here by myself because my wife's out of town. I may have used some foul language. I'm just putting it out there a couple of times. Yeah. What a game. For a while, Serbia, they couldn't miss a three-pointer. They could have done this and chucked the ball over their shoulder and it would have gone in. I mean, hats off to them. They played an incredible game. And you know, the depth. So Serbia has, I don't know, maybe 4 NBA players on their team. Maybe it's more. But of course, no team has the depth and the talent that the U.S. team has. And they just seemed lethargic and I don't know. But man, they turned it on in the fourth quarter. The defense, they just stepped it up to a new level. Incredible. Noreen says, Rob used foul language. So I do. So usually when I'm losing at speed chess, and of course no one's around, I'm always worried someone's going to walk downstairs into the basement where I am right now. And I'm not going to know it. Yeah, occasionally it happens. Anyway, all right, let's get to the questions. Let's get started. Yeah, all right, let's see. So this is from David. He said he wished it was easier to pull together a smart withdrawal strategy. And he talks about other planning tools where you can like just click of the mouse, change your withdrawal strategy. And I had the exact same sort of issue with not just new retirement. Most retirement planning softwares, you know, they don't give you like 10 different withdrawal strategies to select. I mean, I'll give you an example. We've looked at FI Calc a lot, and this is not a retirement planner. I mean, it's like a calculator, but you couldn't, you know, you could use this to maybe inform your decisions, I suppose, but you wouldn't use this to sort of plan out your retirement. But when you look at withdrawal strategies, they've got all these great options, right? And another one that does, let me actually log in. I don't know that I can log into my account, but I'll just pull it up. I've talked about it in the past. Projection Lab. The thing about it, and so New Retirement does too. They have you can mimic the 4% rule, and I'll show you that. But here's the problem with with retirement planners and this, you know, picking of withdrawal strategies. The way the sort of the professional grade planners work, and this would include New Retirement and Projection Lab, but also like the eMoney Advisor and you know, all of the ones that was Right Capital, is that the name of it? But there's several. They're working off of your actual expenses your planned expenses. That's what they want to know. How much are you going to spend each month, each year, and so on. And then do you have the assets to support that spending? That's how they work. With tools that allow you to pick, you know, Guyton Klinger, for example, or some other withdrawal strategy, when they do, they override all of your expenses. They say, okay, you've put all these expenses into the planner. We're going to ignore them. And based on your inputs, we'll just run you know, a withdrawal strategy of some kind. And I ended up finding that not to be that helpful, personally, because I really want the plan to be tied to my actual spending plans. Having said that, New Retirement kind of does give you some options, and let's look at them. So the easiest way to see it, I think, is to go to Money Flows, which is right here. This Money Flows is an important screen, right? It's certainly you're going to have contributions to different, you know, retirement accounts and whatnot if you're still working. But you've got transfers. So transfers can be used, for example, to change the order of withdrawals. And we can talk about that. We've talked about it in the past. This is where you would manually input Roth conversions, right? But then there's withdrawal strategy. And you can get to this also up here, right here, withdrawal. You can select which one you want. So spending needs is the one that pretty much the only one I use. I might look at these others just out of curiosity from time to time, but I'm going to use spending needs. That comes out of my expenses that I put in. And then based on whatever you select, those three options, you'll see the withdrawals. Now the withdrawals don't mean spending, right? Because the blue are RMDs. Just because you have to take an RMD doesn't mean you have to spend it. You can see your expenses, right? You can come down here to income and expenses, and here they are, right? But anyway, going back to money flows. So the other thing you can do is you can say, okay, well, what's my max spending? So I want you to keep an eye on this because these are withdrawals, right? So if we ask for max spending, it's going to add some withdrawals. It's going to say, okay, we had these savings drawdowns that were dictated by some spending things in this plan, whatever that is. We had your RMDs. This red here is probably the long-term care that the plan automatically adds in the last, I think it's 27 months of your life. You can turn that off, and then you've got this orange, which is the max spending. That's because we selected, hey, how much can we spend with the goal of dying? We basically want to die broke. So here at 95, I don't know how you can read that, but we have $410 left, and that's the orange. We've pulled all that out, right? And then fixed percentage, when you select that, you get this green line. And it's, I don't like the term fixed percentage, because normally when you think fixed percentage, you think, I'll take 4% out of my portfolio every year. But it is adjusted for inflation. It is adjusted for inflation. And you can see that now that we have future and today dollars, we're in today dollars. And as a result, this green line never budges, right? If we were to go to future, I assume it goes up. Yeah, it goes up. We'll stick with today for now. So this is the 4% rule. Now, of course, you're withdrawing more at times because of RMDs, right? You've always got to take your RMD. Government gets very upset if you don't take your RMDs. I hear they even penalize you. I guess putting me up there doesn't help, does it? Just covers it up. So now you could say, well, Rob, I want to, I like the 4%, but I want to try a different percent. Do I have to use 4%? Nope. Come in here. Click the little pencil icon, and you can change that. You see it bumped up. And the thing here's the problem with this, is that there's still no indication you're going to actually spend this money, right? You're withdrawing it, but maybe you're in a situation where you could say, yeah, I know I'm going to spend every dime of it. But I've come to the point where I view withdrawal strategies as not a way to dictate my spending, but as a way to give me a sanity check. Am I going off the rails here? Or does this seem likely to be about right? So there are times when with a withdrawal strategy might dictate spending for some people. If you're relying primarily on Social Security and a relatively small amount of nest egg, I could see the smart spending and retirement plan or retirement strategy. I think that's what it's called. And I did a video on it, where you delay Social Security as long as you can, and then you take withdrawals from your investments based on an RMD type calculation. But I think that could be sensible in a lot of cases. I know a lot of retirees that's effectively what they do. They just, most of the retirements in a traditional IRA, they get their RMD check, they spend that and Social Security, and maybe if they have a pension, the pension. But if you have any amount of assets beyond that, I just don't find the withdrawal strategies as a way to determine what I'm going to actually spend. The other thing David asked, and I'll go back, I'm going to alternate. I'll do one here and then I'll grab one from the chat since, yeah. It would be nice if there was a one-page financial plan. I don't think they have that I'm aware of. You can come down here and download and print it. So you could print the plan with optimistic, average, or pessimistic assumptions. But it's like 20 some pages. I'll give that a second to actually. Oh, there we go. Oh, it spit it out. Okay. Yeah. So it's a 26 page report, and it doesn't look all that pretty. I guess it's okay. I guess if you wanted to print it out and then put it in your blue binder, maybe talk to your significant other about it, possibly. And then you can also download the data to a spreadsheet. You can also view your plan's data online. Have you guys ever done this? Hold on, here we go. Boom. There's a lot of stuff going on there. Year by year data, all the data you could possibly want. Yeah, I don't do much with that. All right. Let me put my computer aside from my laptop for a second, go to the chat and see what we got going on. So this is not as specific to new retirement, but it's relevant. First of all, yeah, you can do a backdoor Roth every year. Yeah, there's no, a backdoor. I was thinking Roth conversion, but yeah. Well, you have to have earned income to put, a backdoor Roth is you put after-tax money in a traditional, I should say, all initial money you put into a traditional IRA, as a contribution is after tax. Some people can then take a deduction at the end of the year, but assuming you can't. But in order to do that, before you can even get to the point of moving it over to a Roth, you got to have earned income. So, and in terms of like, what's the best strategy, Vincent? It's going to entirely depend on tax analysis. I really can't, it's really going to just depend on tax analysis. Okay. All right, Russell's got a great question, and a lot of folks emailed me this about Roth conversions in light of both taxes and IRMA. I was actually looking at this today, and it's not a perfect solution. I don't know that there is one. So the first thing I would do, here's how I would think about this issue and how I work on it in new retirement. Let me go ahead and take the comment down. The first thing I would do, we're in the base plan. I would create a duplicate of the plan, and I've already done that, but I'll just do it again. So I'd create a new scenario. We'll call it Roth conversions. Yeah, and I'll import data from the base plan, and I'll create the scenario. Now I've created this scenario. You can see it right here, but I'm not in it yet. I'm still in the base plan. So I want to go to the Roth conversion scenario. So this scenario at the moment is identical to the base plan. And of course, I wouldn't do this, by the way, until the base plan was, everything else was set. I had everything else that I needed. I'll try this again and see if I eventually get in the way of the screen. And then I do like their Explorer Roth conversion tool, but it has limitations. So you notice you've got a couple of different ways to have new retirement evaluate Roth conversions. Highest estate value. I have not found a use for this yet. I don't care about the highest estate value. I might care about the highest after-tax estate value. There could be a use for this, and I haven't figured out what it is. But then you can limit it to tax brackets, right? Pick your bracket. Say, I want to convert up to one of those brackets. We'll talk about that. Lifetime, I just want lifetime lowest tax liability. I think that can be useful. And then IRMA brackets. I find the IRMA bracket, there could be exceptions. There could be people where this would make sense, but I don't find it very useful. And I'll explain why. So when you select this, you have to pick which IRMA bracket you want to avoid effectively. I want to do all these conversions, but I don't want to be in any. I don't have any extra charge. Oh, that's yeah. So that'd be this one. I don't want any. Yeah, it says right there, no IRMA charge. So 206,000, or whatever. You might say, well, I'm willing to pay something, I'll pay this, but whatever. Let's just assume we don't want to pay any IRMA at all. And then you have to decide here, do you want the tool to suggest conversions even if you don't have money in your brokerage account to pay the taxes? I would generally say no to this. And I would also, for me, set a minimum amount that I'd want to keep in after-tax accounts. For our purposes, I'll just, I don't know, put in 25,000. But that's what all this does. And you can play with the different, I mean, you can run the analysis both ways and see what you think. And so here's the optimized plan. Now you'll notice your lifetime taxes actually go up, right? I mean, you've presumably avoided IRMA. They said you should have, right? And we can see that if we come down to the bottom here, I think. Where is it? IRMA fees. Oh, that's interesting. Oh yeah, no. So if we hadn't optimized anything, the current plan, we would have triggered IRMA these 5 years. Now, there may be other ways to avoid triggering IRMA, but in any event, once we did these Roth conversions, we went to zero. So we saved. This is the problem I have with optimizing just for IRMA. Oh, and I realize now I do need to get rid of my, there we go. Sorry. So there it is, zero. This is lifetime IRMA fees. This is the graph. The problem that I have with it is we've saved $9,233 of increased Medicare premiums. That's good. And it's cost us $53,973 in extra taxes. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Now, of course, we always keep in mind these are estimates. We don't know what the tax laws are going to be like. Your tax filing status can change, or a spouse could pass away, you could get married, a gazillion different things could happen to change this. But it's just optimizing for IRMA seems to be optimizing for the wrong thing to me. And I'd be curious in the chat if anyone disagrees with that. But if you optimize for something else, so let's go to the tax bracket. Now, we'll optimize for tax bracket. Before we do that, the question is, well, what tax bracket are we going to pick? So one way to think about it is go to Insights, go to Taxes. There are other places you can see this. And we'll just focus on federal tax law, but you would need to think about state as well. Here's your net taxable income by federal tax bracket. And you can see you eventually here jump into the 28% bracket, not by a lot. Of course, it would seem like that would be easy. It seems like to get out of the 28% tax bracket, because you can see you're only in that bracket for a few $1,000s. Now, again, this is in today's dollars. If future dollars, it's going to be more, but we'll stick with today's. But it would seem like you wouldn't have to convert that much, right, to avoid that. And then after that, you're pretty much in the 25% bracket. There's no way you're in the 25% bracket, or for the next 2 years, 22%, right? It goes to 25 when the tax laws change. And you can tell the system to ignore those future tax laws and the assumptions right up here if you want. But right now, I'm just assuming the taxes are going to go up. But your guess is as good as mine. You're sort of already in the 25% bracket. I don't see how you're going to get lower. You're not, right? With conversions, you can get rid of this 28%. Pretty easily, but you're going to be in the 25. So, but having said that, let's go to the Roth conversion explorer tool. We'll pick tax brackets, and you'll notice they don't have 25 here. But I think the way this works, it tells you right down here. Oh, aren't they thoughtful? Your plan is currently modeling the Tax Cut and Jobs Act to sunset after 2025, which is how I have my own plan as well. So we'll pick 25. Or 24, I guess. We'll set the same minimum to keep in our brokerage. And okay, it's interesting. It's a lot up front, right? It's a lot upfront. And I guess it's because, and I have to look at the specifics of this plan, but before Social Security kicks in, before RMDs, maybe before IRMA. And it says you save $120,000 in taxes. So a couple of things to note here. You can still, even though we didn't optimize for IRMA, right, in this scenario, but we can look at the IRMA effect. Just scroll back down. It's the same thing. It's the same kind of chart we saw a moment ago. Here it is. So it triggers a lot more IRMA, right? It goes from 9 grand to 35. So that's a 26,000 whatever increase. But of course, you're saving a lot more than that in taxes. I like that it shows you each year the effects, because you could say, well, maybe I'll take these recommendations as sort of a starting point, and we'll look at pulling these into your plan. You could pull these into your plan and then modify them, right? We can look at that. And you can look at other ways that it changes it, like federal income tax rate, optimized plan, and current. To me, it seems like it overemphasizes these first few years, but again, this is tricky. This is tricky analysis, a lot of moving parts, but you can manually change that. And again, I'll show you and play with it. And then if we edit this I like to run the lowest lifetime tax liability. And you'll notice it's very similar to optimizing to the 24% tax bracket. It looks like there's a couple more out here, and the amounts per year change a bit. Now this says you only save 24 grand, but your IRMA goes up, but not as much. It's not a big difference, frankly. Now again, we got to keep in mind that a couple of things. This is a particular plan. I'll come back to all this. It's got assets of 1.25 million, mainly in retirement accounts and brokerage. So, every situation is going to be different. The other thing we have to keep in mind is that the Roth conversion analysis is very, let me switch this to spending needs. I don't think that changes the Roth analysis, but we'll see. It's very sensitive to your assumptions here. So in fact, let's rerun it. We'll do limit. I don't remember if I must have done this for. Oh, interesting. I don't know if I don't wonder why that changed. See, I wonder if when I edit this, any changes it shows is compared to the previous analysis. But now it's showing we saved 67,000, and our IRMA is a little higher. So I'm not sure why that is. Let me back out again. I'm going to refresh the screen, and then I'm going to run it again. The first time same number. The first time I ran this, let's try. I'm going to try something. I don't know how much you got. I know I'm kind of jumping around here. And I apologize for that. But I initially did the bracket analysis, right? And I got a bigger number. This seems right. And then instead of getting out of this and then doing it again, I just edited this here, and I went to this. No, it's still got the 66,000. Oh, look at this. And now it's different here. But I've still got this the same. Yeah, see, that concerns me a little bit. This would, if this were my plan, I think I would reach out to New Retirement on this to understand what's going on. The other point I want to make, though, is this matters. If I go to optimistic, it changes. And it changes if you think about it, because it means that if optimistic rates of return are higher, inflation is lower, and so at least generally, right? And so my IRA balances are going to be higher when RMDs kick in, and so it gives you more opportunities for conversions and whatnot. But still, I'm a little troubled that how you get into the analysis, whether you're switching from one to the other or getting out completely and going in, it looks to be like it's producing different results. And I don't understand why it would do that. I'll have to reach out to Nancy. Someone from New Retirement might be watching, by the way. I don't know. If they are, maybe they can tell us. Maybe I found a bug. I don't know. I skipped over a lot of other things, but it shows you projected account balances and other things. And then if you want to apply to the scenario, you can just click apply. And that's why I do it as a separate scenario. I don't want to mess up my base plan. And so when you apply the changes, you see it in money flows, and they've brought you here. So we're in money. It just sent us back to money flows, which is right here. And we're in the Roth conversion section, and it's just manually entered year by year. It shows the conversions in December of each year. It's manually entered these conversions, and you could come in. You could create a new scenario and then change these, right? And you could say, well, 307, that's going to be a heck of a tax bill. Let's I get the system says that's optimized, but I'm just not comfortable with that, or whatever, right? And you could change, you could delete one of these, you could change the amount. You don't have to do them in December. Let me just check the chat. I don't know. Hopefully all of this is helpful. But you'll notice that in all of this, it's a bit of trial and error and some guesswork. There's just too many assumptions. Too many assumptions. Let's see here. RJ says to set inflation to 3%. That was a question that came up, some emails, and I'm sure others have have asked it in the chat. So let's just talk about assumptions, because that's pretty important. Because you know what they say when you assume, and there's just like a ton of assumptions. And assumptions in New Retirement can be a bit confusing, at least they confuse me. So here's the assumptions tab or link, whatever. So this assumption, these up here about how long you're going to live and whatnot. Where things get interesting are inflation. So I already have inflation at 3%. Now you'll notice, and we're in the Roth conversion. We can go to the baseline. It's the same thing. You'll notice that I have optimistic and pessimistic is the same. And I have the COLA for Social Security is the same. And these are different. But the reason I actually made this change because I was toying with something today. Here's the point. Normally, you wouldn't make these the same. You'd say, okay, optimistic inflation, I don't know, 2%. Whoops, not 200%, 2%. Pessimistic might be, we'll just say 4, since RJ mentioned 3. And let me take his comment off just so you can see everything. And then that way, when I do assumptions here, if I want 3, I can just pick average, right? If I want to really stress test it, pick pessimistic, go to 4%. The thing that's confusing is that by and large, the rates for general inflation and the rates for the COLA for Social Security are the same. I think technically Social Security could be a tad lower, but okay, whatever. The reality is your rate of inflation is not going to be CPI. You know, we all have our own sort of unique rate of inflation based on where we live and how we spend our money. And so I would have no qualms keeping them the same. But the key is, I don't think they should be significantly different, right? You're not going to have general inflation at 5% and the COLA at 1%, right? Or the other way around. But here's where things get complicated, I think, or confusing, maybe it's a better word. With general inflation, pessimistic means the inflation's higher than we want it to be, right? And optimistic is it's pretty good, it's low. With COLA, it's the opposite, right? Because COLA deals with us getting more money. So optimistic would be high and pessimistic would be low. So if we imagine optimistic at 4%, goodness gracious, here we go. And so I almost went to foul language. All right. And optimistic at 2.0, or I mean pessimistic, this leads to results that don't make any sense, because if general inflation is 4%, the COLA is not going to be 2. So I think you need to switch these. And that can be confusing, but I think this is correct. Did I do that right? Wait a minute. See, it's confusing. Yeah, though I did do it right. Yeah, it's right now. Optimistic would be lower. No, I did it wrong. See, this is why it's so darn confusing. No, that's correct. Optimistic and pessimistic should match effectively. If inflation's low, cold is going to be low. But that would be quote unquote pessimistic. I think this is right. See how it's confusing? So here's what I was toying with. If you think about these options, these are just different scenarios. It's just they've given you an easy way to toggle between them. But you don't have to do it that way. You can just say, okay, this is all confusing. So I think inflation is going to be 3%, and I'll just assume the COLA will match it. You could put 2.9, whatever. I'm going to keep these the same, and you could even keep these the same. And then I do want to stress test it, as RJ mentioned. So I'll have I called it a 4.5% inflation model. I'll just have a different scenario, 4.5, and I think I put 4.4 here. And then I can compare these. Let me back up. I know I went through that fast. So you can see your scenarios right here. You click on that, you get to this page. And then you can compare by clicking that button. And I'm just going to compare two different scenarios. I could compare the 4% and the baseline, and I can compare them side by side. That's one way to do it, because I think those assumptions are, the way it's set up is confusing. The other question I got about assumptions, or I don't know if this is an assumption necessarily, but is this budget scenario like to spend and must spend? So this is relevant if you're using the detailed budgeter. So how that works, if you go to expenses and you go to recurring, you can just use a basic budgeter and you just put in a number. And you could create a couple of different numbers, right? So for example, you could say, all right, my basic core spending, I have $6,000 a month in this plan. And then you could add another, and you could say, all right, you know what? I'm going to travel, but I'm not going to travel when I'm 97. I'm going to travel for the first 15, hopefully the first 15 years of my retirement. So that'll be until I'm 80 in this case. Doesn't really matter. Just pick something. And I'm going to spend $500 a month or whatever. And so you could do that, and you've got your travel. Now, you could also do, some people prefer, I want to do a detailed budget, category by category. And when you do that, you see this like to spend and must spend. So how does that work? And you can see I've not really set it up here. Well, if we edit the detailed budgeter, we get this. And we can literally, you've got these categories: home-related, utilities, auto, food. So let's use food and dining as an example. You want to add an expense, and it just brings up this box, this form, and we'll say it's restaurants. You can give it a label if you want. Frequency and must spend. Now, I guess you could keep that at 0, but maybe you say, no, for mental health reasons, I got to eat out a few times a month. And we'll put, I don't know, $200. Like to spend would be, but if things go well and I've got the money, I'd rather spend $400. So I got to spend $200, but I'd like to spend $400. And there's other things. Is it tax deductible or not? How long will this expense last? And you can save it. And you can imagine doing that for your whole budget, like to spend and must spend. And then once that's done, it's an assumption. You can say, okay, how am I looking if I use the must spend? This is, my must spend category. I better be, I better have a high chance of success, and maybe doesn't have to be 99%, but 90 maybe, or maybe I do want 99%, because that's my must spend. That's bare bones or whatever. And then, okay, if I want to live high, if I really want to live life to the fullest, whatever that means for you and money, and you could do this. Now, in my case, by the way, in this demo, I don't have any yet. I don't have much put in for these two. So that's why they both show 99%. All right. Hopefully that makes sense. I'm trying to check the chat towards the bottom in case, this is, I think it's as easy to use as they could probably make it for the most part, but it's still, retirement plan software is complicated. So I just want to make sure I'm not missing anything in my take on these questions, because, I certainly don't know everything about the software. I mean, I've used it a lot, but Hopscotch loves the new retirement working sessions. I'm thrilled. I don't think I ever recommended worthy bonds, Peter. I don't think so. This is unrelated to new retirement, but you caught my eye on that. I'm not saying worthy bonds are good or bad. I'm not really focused on them. They just seem unnecessary to me, maybe. But this is what a worthy bonds. And I've looked at it in the past. Honestly, I don't even remember how they work. Yeah, but I've not recommended worthy bonds. I don't believe. All right, let's head back to the top. Dave from TBF. I don't know what that is. Why is legacy always given in future dollars? I don't know. That's a good question. And by legacy, let's see if I can find it. Because you can certainly see end of plan in today's dollars. Right? Where is legacy? I don't know where that is. You have projected net worth. Like you have projected net worth, for example, and we can put that in. It's in today's dollars. So maybe I don't know. I know there's a legacy thing in here, and you can set legacy goals. Is that? Let me see. Maybe that's the issue. Maybe this is what you're talking about under estate planning. Yes. Oh, it's in today's dollars. Let's see if I put a million, 100. Oh, I see. It's in future dollars, but it's converting it to today's dollars. I don't know. I mean, they're showing you both. But I don't know the thinking behind that. I don't know. Interesting question. I believe Lou's question is how they calculate future dollars. I'm pretty sure they use the flat rate of inflation that you put in as the assumption, and then based on whether you're choosing pessimistic, average, or optimistic. I mean, I assume that's what they're doing. I don't know how else they would do it. I mean, and in fact, we can kind of test that, right? Because we're in today's dollars. Let's put it in optimistic, and it shows an ending balance of 6.3. Well, this is going to be returns and inflation, but it's got to be. I don't know how else would they calculate it. I don't know what. I can't imagine they insert their own assumption about inflation. You know how we can look at it. Here's how we can see is expenses. So here are the estimated expenses. And like we can just look for the last year, it's 252,000. You see the number over here as I hover over the second to last bar, 252. That's pessimistic. If we go to optimistic, yeah, it's 182. And these are expenses, right? So that would just be inflation, I think. So yeah, I assume they're using the assumptions we put into the planner. Dave wants to know, what are the 2 or 3 assumptions you need to make in new retirement that if you get wrong will be the most problematic? That's a great question, because not every assumption or input is created equal. Some, in the consulting world, they maybe call it a sensitivity analysis. But it seems to me, just off the top of my head, the 3 would be returns, inflation, and longevity. I mean, those are certainly 3 of the big ones. They're trying to think. If we go to the assumptions, so longevity, we've got that's inflation, more or less. I mean, there are different kinds of inflation, but yeah, I think those are probably the big 3. And so what that means, at least to me, is that you can stress about getting them right or wrong, but the problem is, in some ways, there is no right or wrong. I guess there could be wrong in the sense that you could make some extreme assumption, maybe. But it really is just making the best assumptions you can, and then stress testing your plan. Like RJ mentioned, let's assume a 4% inflation or 3%, or 3% would not be stress testing it. 4% might not either, but going to some, I'll call it reasonable extremes. One of the things about inflation that I try to keep in mind, if I want to stress test it, and I want to have some high rate of inflation, whatever that might mean for you. Right now, we've got in this plan 4.5, and I've got them both set. That's just how I did it a minute ago. But whatever the pessimistic is, 4.5. When I go to my accounts, I want to see, well, what's my pessimistic rate of return? Because it's not, you can't really look at the returns and the inflation separately. There's a relationship between the two. So in effect, in this plan, the pessimistic 4.5% inflation and pessimistic 5% rate of return just means that for this plan, pessimistic is a real return of 0.5%. That doesn't seem unreasonable to me. I suppose you could say, well, I'll bump up inflation to 5 and just effectively assume a 0% real return. You could think about that, and you could say, well, what's the likelihood that we're going to have a 0% real return over, say, the next 30 years? I suppose not good, unless we had some sort of hyperinflation. But, again, you could stress test your plan and see how it does. But I guess the point for me is that I'm always thinking about the pessimistic inflation in light of the pessimistic rate of returns on the investments. I think there's a connection there. Vinyl says there's an option missing for long-term care where you pay for it yourself. Really? You have the paid plan? I mean, let's go back to this one. So it's right here under expenses and healthcare, long-term care. These are purchasing different things. Plan to use home equity, plan to use up savings, and then try to qualify for baseline care through Medicaid. If you want to completely sort of get rid of the expense, you could just say, we'll never require any kind of long-term care. They give you a warning. But when you do that, let's do that for the spouse in this plan too. Then when we go to expenses, you recall there was a red part of the bar of the last 3 years of life. That should be gone. Yeah, estimated expenses, you come here, there's nothing for long-term care. I think for my plan, my actual plan, I think I just I assume home equity will pay for it, and I keep the expenses that they've automatically added in, just as, it's as good an assumption as I can make. So Wilma's having a hard time figuring out how to load passive income in new retirement. Let's take a look-see. So we go to income, passive income. Add it. So you can give it a name. We'll call it a side hustle. And this is before taxes. Because in other words, that's important to understand because with passive income, new retirement will calculate the tax for you. So you put in whatever you're going to make a month. It's monthly. When it's going to start, how long it's going to last. We'll just throw something in. Is there going to be growth? Is this going to go up? And again, they give you optimistic and pessimistic, and you can always just assume 0. And there it is. So, and you can use that for a lot of different things. So, you know, if you can use this to record rental income. They actually say that you can use that to record dividends that you're going to spend. The treatment to dividends, really, I'm hoping that they release something this year that updates that, because it's not, it could be better. But I hopefully that helped, Wilma. Bill says they need to account for ACA tax credits. Yeah, I guess they don't do that, do they? And I know the Roth conversion doesn't account for it. I mean, that's an important thing, obviously, for those, you know, before Medicare kicks in. Let's go blue. I felt like I was watching Ohio State lose to Michigan today when I was watching the USA team. It was the exact same sickening feeling. Unlike Ohio State the last 3 years, Team USA pulled it out. Okay. So Vinyl wants to know if these apps model continuing to save while retired. So if you guys don't know Vinyl, he's going to die, I think, or she, with the most money. That's my sense. That's my best guess. Sure. I mean, it depends what yeah, I mean, you could continue. Well, here's how they would do it. And I think most planners work this way, as far as I know. You're going to have different sources of income, right? And if you're totally retired, you know, income, it could be Social Security, pensions, investment income, you have rental properties. And then, of course, you're going to have spending. Now, the understanding based on your question is your spending is less than your income. So then the question is, what does a retirement planner like New Retirement do with all of that extra income? And you can tell it what to do with it. And I'll show you. I got to remember where this is. Here it is. Money flows, excess income. And they even tell you what your projected excess income is. I imagine Vinyl says like $47 million or something. Anyway, you can edit it here. What do you want to do with it? I'm going to say, in the way New Retirement does it, you can say, I'm going to save a certain percent of it. And the reason I think they do that is some could say, well, if I have excess, I might spend a little, whatever. Or no, you're going to save it all. And then where's it going to go? And there you go. So yeah, that's how New Retirement handles it. I think actually a lot of programs handle it that way, I believe. Madhu, I'm not trying to pronounce your name, but can you please explain the defined benefits plan? Yes, I can at a high level. It's not really a New Retirement question, but I guess it could be related. So a 401k or an IRA is a defined contribution plan. And what that means, that's just a fancy way of saying how much you can contribute is there's a number. That's, you can, there's a limit, but you can contribute that much. How much you'll end up with, when you retire, that depends on how you invest it and how the markets do. It's so they don't define the benefit at the end when you retire, but they do tell you, they define the amount of the contribution. The defined benefit plan kind of works the opposite way. What they do is say, okay, we're going to figure out what your benefit's going to be. Think monthly benefit, annual benefit. And then based on a number of assumptions, including your current age and other factors, we'll tell you how much you can contribute to this plan every year. Now, you said, we'll tell you. You're like, well, Rob, who actually tells you that? The company you hire to manage this whole thing, because it's a complicated mess and it's expensive. They're expensive to set up and establish. And I did have one for a number of years. And it can allow you to save a truckload of money for retirement. I mean, depending on your circumstances, it could be 6 figures a year. I mean, you can save a lot more in a defined benefit plan. Who are they generally ideal for? And we're talking about small plans now. A lot of times it's for folks 50 or older, and maybe you're a doctor, and it's just you're the only employee, or you're some professional, or you're a business owner, and you've got high income. And a defined benefit plan could make sense. The reason I say you're 50 or older is because the amount of your contribution each year, again, it's based on a defined benefit, and there are limits to what that benefit can be. They're set by the IRS every year. But when you retire, and so that in turn depends on how many years you have until you retire, right? Well, if you're 20, you got a long way to go. And because of that, when they calculate your defined your actual contribution for a given year, it's going to be so low that it's really a defined benefit plans. It's not going to make any sense. You'd be just better off with a SEP IRA or solo 401k or something. So yeah, that's a high level, I'm sure, very incomplete description of a defined benefit plan. I think Schwab offers one, at least they did. They call them personal defined benefit plans. Yeah. So here's the website. You just Google Schwab defined benefit plan, you'll find it. Theirs is probably one of the least expensive. It's $22.50 for startup. There's annual fees. There's a lot of forms that have to be, and calculations that have to be made, and reporting to the IRS. Yeah. Hopefully that helps. Uh-oh, I spoiled. I'm so sorry. I just assumed everyone knew the outcome. Yeah, that's bad. I should have said spoiler alert. So Bob, looks like he's running some Social Security claiming strategy analysis, both from Mike's program, and he's referring to Open Social Security. It's a free program. Whoops, I'll pull it up on the screen. I had Mike on the show, so you can check out that, but here it is. And let me pull the comment down. So apparently, New Retirement is suggesting they both claim at 70. Mike's suggesting 62 and 70. I probably, in most cases, prefer the results of Open Social Security. But, there's a lot, again, there's a lot of assumptions that go into this. And so, I can't say that one is right and one is wrong. I will say I got an email from a viewer just maybe yesterday who hired Mike Piper. He blogs at Oblivious Investor. I think I got that right. He's a CPA, written a number of books, great guy. He's been on the show. And he does, I guess, consulting. He'll look at and do an evaluation for folks, for Roth conversions, for Social Security claiming. And the person sent me an email and basically just said he had this analysis done and it was phenomenal. Very happy with the work that Mike did. I actually think I'm going to hire Mike. He doesn't know this yet. To do, maybe I'll have him do both. Social Security claiming and Roth conversions. I'm having a couple of other firms do the same thing. And then I think I'm gonna do a video sort of comparing the results. I probably won't give you numbers, but that won't matter, right? I mean, and I'm curious. I actually have 3 different companies doing this. And I'll be curious if they come up with different results. And then I'll compare it to new retirement. That'll be fun. All right. Okay. Nancy wants to know, again, not a new retirement question, but if the stock app on iPhone doesn't show total return of bonds, I had that exact same question, Nancy, and I suspect it doesn't, that it's based on price and it doesn't factor in interest is my guess. I was looking at that just yesterday or the day before. But isn't the market amazing? Now apparently there's no recession and it's, good times are here. It's market's up. Warren Buffett probably is kicking himself for selling Apple. Yeah, I doubt it. All right. I'm going to stick with questions related to retirement planning generally and new retirement specifically. So Dave says, talking about the Roth conversion analysis we were looking at, that it becomes a big issue when one thinks about the widow's penalty for a married couple. Yeah, this is a difficult, I don't know of an easy answer to this. The point that I think Dave is making, and I mean, you can model this in new retirement. I'll show you. We'll create a new scenario. Call it early death. I don't know what to call it. And then we can go to assumptions and we can assume that a spouse, I'll assume that this isn't me, but I'll assume that I kicked the bucket early. So instead of living to 95, I'll live to 78. Let me actually, where was that? That was 95, right? Wait a minute, Rob. I'm not in the right plan. Let me put this back. I think it was 95. In any event, let me get to the right plan. Now I'll put 78 in. And you can see it jump over here, estimated taxes. And of course, we know why, right? As a single filer, the income's going to go down a little bit, right? Because of Social Security. Depending on which spouse dies, it may not go down as much as you might think. If the lower earners, if the higher earner dies first, the lower earner gets that higher benefit. But at 95, then we go back down to 78, and you can see it jump up. And then we can compare the scenarios. Early death and baseline. I mean, look at see, like this, I'd want to explore more. That just seems crazy. But, taxes it's a big difference. Now, the problem, I mean, I don't know how you plan for that, assuming that both spouses are reasonably healthy. And then, by the way, if one spouse does die, the plan I just created assumes the surviving spouse never remarries. You might remarry eventually. Now you're back to, joint filing. Well, assuming I'll make the assumption that you are, If there's a reason to believe that one spouse may not live as long as the other, then, you could put that into the plan. But it affects, it affects Roth conversions, right? I mean, it affects so much. But I find it, except in maybe extreme cases where, maybe a spouse is sick or whatever, it's a very hard thing. I can't wrap my mind around how to even think through that issue. Yeah. All right. P. Ware says, and this is, I think, in reference to Roth conversions, to the extent you're going to leave money to heirs, you need to factor in their tax bracket. And that's absolutely true. Depending on what their tax bracket is compared to your tax bracket, it may or may not be best to leave them Roth money. Again, the problem with that is, you're planning, you're making these decisions, say in your 60s, and you're hoping to live, a while longer. And it may be difficult to know exactly. You might have some idea of your tax bracket, your children's. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. I mean, it just depends on what's going on in their lives. So that could be a tricky thing to plan for, but it is an important consideration. I say just spend all the money and then you don't have to worry about it. All right. I thought it would be 25. I thought there's a 25%. Russell says the old 24% tax bracket will be the new 28%. Well, let's see what the 2026 tax brackets are. So the tax brackets will be, well, that's interesting. So I Googled, the 2026 tax brackets, and PNC Bank comes up as the number one choice. That seems odd to me. There'll be a 25% bracket and a 28%. So it goes from, I guess, the 22 will become 25, yes, and the 24, I assume, will become 28. Yeah. Unless they change it. Is there a difference between using new retirement and the iPad version? I don't have my iPad down here. I didn't know they had an iPad app. I don't think there would be a difference that I know of if you're using a browser. Do they have an iPad app? If they do, I've never used it. Let me look something up real quick. Okay. Let me see if I can understand this question from Everlasting Arms. Am I wrong, or did I notice that when one saved on paying taxes, the overall value of the account also was lower in many cases? Yeah, that could be true, I think. Well, wait a minute. Let me think about this. Because I think it could be, because you're ending up with more money that's after tax. That's why the end of estate values, I'm not sure they help me much anyway. So I think that's possible if I'm understanding your question correctly. I'll just cover this real quick from Peter about locking in higher rates with a T-bill ETF versus just regular T-bills. I'm not sure they really would lock in rates. I mean, T-bill ETFs are very short maturity ETFs, so I don't really say you'd lock in rates. right? I just have to look this up because it's an interesting question. I'm going to pull up. That's a 6-month X bill is a 6-month Treasury ETF, has a duration of just under half a year. Well, 6 months, right? So you really wouldn't be locking in rates for very long, and I don't know how that would differ than a 6-month T-bill in terms of protecting against rates going down. I mean, the value would go up to a point if you sold. If you held to mature, well, of course, the X bill doesn't mature, but I'm not sure that would be the way to lock in rates. I think you'd want to go, if you thought rates were going to go down, you'd want to go further out in the yield curve, I would think. I am using the paid version of New Retirement. That, if that's the question, that is correct. I don't know if this question is for me, but I don't think that is for me. All right. I'll answer this one, even though I wasn't tagged in it. Do Monte Carlo simulations vary inflation? Yes. Well, in New Retirement they do, or they can. If you, we'll just go back to the base plan. And you can do a Monte Carlo down here, and you can vary general inflation, medical inflation. You can vary wage growth. So, and then again, if you change your assumption here, it's going to change, the results. So. Let's see. Let me check a couple of the other emailed questions. I think I've covered a lot of these already. Oh, Kevin asked me about, having like a rental property and then selling it. You plan to sell it at some point. So, yeah, we can do that. So one thing I'll mention is if you go to help.newretirement.com, you get their help documents. I was looking at dividends earlier today, but if you put in rental property, passive income from rental, accounting for rental real estate, definitely read these. These are very, very useful. You can put in a rental property. I think I might have already added one earlier today under home and real estate. Yeah, other property owned. I have a rental property. We can look at the details. I just put in a value of $350 and no mortgage. If you have a mortgage, then you put in other stuff. We'll save that. And then down here, you can put in future purchases. Maybe you plan to buy one 5 years from now, and then future sales. So if you look at this, I put in here, you pick which property, which is, I picked rental property 1. When I'm going to sell it, I just picked 10 years from now, where the proceeds are going to go. And it calculates the value. I don't know if I wonder if this does it on general inflation. I don't know that. Let's see here. Let me actually change this significantly and then go back to real estate. Future sale. So this says 497. Pessimistic, it goes to 428. It goes down more, right? And that must mean we're in today's dollars. Yeah, we're in today's dollars. So yeah, it's using general inflation. And if we go to, and I'm sorry if I'm going through this too fast. Maybe I should slow down. I don't know. But optimistic, it goes up because inflation's lower. So the future value in today's dollars, it goes higher. in future dollars, right, pessimistic would go higher. Or maybe this never shows it in future, or maybe this is always, no, this can't be. Yeah. Pessimistic. This must always be in current. I don't know how they do that. It must be always in current. But in any event, it's clearly based on inflation. So, whoops. Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, so that's how you'd set it up. In terms of tracking rental income, I would suggest it's pretty clear when you read these how there's a couple of different ways to do it. Pretty straightforward. Okay. We've got someone from the UK watching. Welcome. Rob Harris says he uses 2.5% for planning purposes on inflation. I would be very happy with 2.5% for the next 30 or 40 years. Well, here's a tidbit I didn't know from Gary. This comes from working with Nancy, who works at New Retirement. She's great. We discovered that you need to use the detail budgeter for your future one-time expenses if you want the expense to be inflation adjusted. Okay, didn't know that. Gary has a great question. Does New Retirement include the net interest, the net income, the net interest, the 3.8%? That's what I call it. Tax calculation. I don't know off the top of my head. Net investment. Let's see here. I think it might. Oh, it's not included I'm sorry. Here's what I'm reading. The tax is not included in new retirement calculations. Good question. Glad you asked it. I'm trying to think why it's probably, in order for new retirement to include it, it would have to know how much of your income each year is subject to it. And that might be not an altogether simple thing for a retirement planner to do, but I don't know. I don't know if like a Right Capital calculates it or not, which is sort of like, professional grade advisors use that. Well, advisors use New Retirement. I'm not getting an easy answer. Okay. Well, here's an interesting question. How would you estimate the return of TIPS and I bonds when they're indexed to inflation, but the real yield is known? Well, if you think about a regular brokerage or retirement account that's got, stocks and bonds in it, and let's assume that you put in an average expected return of 7%. That includes inflation, right? In a way, right? I mean, and particularly the way New Retirement sets it up, because they deal with inflation separately. So that's a sort of a nominal number, right, before inflation. So you're including inflation in that number, so to speak. So I don't know that you would do it any differently with an I bond. Of course, you'd say, well, what inflation number would you use? But, and I understand that. I guess you could maybe target it so that, And you'd have to keep these investments in a separate account, which you can do, right? You can split up. You might have one account. Let's say it's got tips and nominal bonds in it, but in new retirement, you can create two accounts, assuming you're not linking your accounts. You can create two accounts, one to hold part of that investment, the tips, let's say, and another account to hold the other, and then give them different returns, right? Your accounts in new retirement don't have to match up one for one with your accounts in the real world. And I suppose you could, if you've got the real yield, you could add to it for the optimistic number, your optimistic inflation. And for the pessimistic number, the pessimistic inflation. That's at least what comes to mind. I'm not sure if that's the best way. Maybe it's a bad way. But that's what I got tonight. In terms of withdrawal method, which one should I set? I mentioned this earlier, but I'll cover it. I just almost always keep it on spending needs for my own plan. Again, these are particularly max spending. I'm always curious because it kind of gives me a rough idea of how much I'm underspending, at least based on all the assumptions in my plan, but I keep it on spending needs. Is it possible to model bond ladders? Well, sure. Well, I say that maybe too quickly. You could. I want to just see. I'll turn the screen on. I'm sort of poking around. Because one thing I guess you could do, this would get tedious. You could have another asset. We'll just say bond. We'll put the bond ladder. So let's imagine you have bonds that mature in the next 10 years. So we're going to have a 2025 bond. And whatever the value is, you got 10,000 in it. And I guess you'll depending on the buy, I guess you'll probably know the return, assuming you're going to hold it to maturity, right? So you can just put that in. The thing that's got me a little concerned about this is a couple of things. Let's imagine we're modeling a 2030 bond. Well, you're going to get interest payments on that. And I don't know how to practically affect. What you could do is, if the value is 10,000 and you know what you're going to get at maturity, whatever that is, well, you're going to get 10,000 at maturity, right? So you could, in theory, put that at zero because at maturity you're going to get 10 grand. I'm assuming the face value is 10 grand. But this doesn't actually show you getting it in 2030. You then have to do, I think, some money flows, or even income, maybe passive income. Set up the interest as passive income. I don't know. That's tricky to me. Let me see if they have any help documents on that one. Oh, they do. Here they are. So they're setting it up as an investment. They give it a name. Ordinary income is your tax treatment. That makes sense. If you prefer to model the CD or bonds with a ladder strategy, you'll set the rate of return to zero, okay, and exclude the account from the withdrawal strategy. All right. Then head over to my plan. Yeah, money flows, transfers. Okay, they're doing it as transfer, and enter a transfer of the CD or bond principal to savings or checkings account. And then finally navigate to my plan income pension and add a lump sum pension directed to the CD account for the amount of interest you expect to receive at maturity date. So that's a fair amount of work to do, but if you go to their help documents and search for CD ladder, you'll get this. And it walks you through step by step. Yeah, that's a tough one. There you go. So I was sort of kind of in the ballpark of roughly what sections of the new retirement software you should be using. That's pathetic. Okay. You can tell I don't have bond ladders. They seem like so much work to me. I don't know. So Norm says the Roth estimator is nice, but why doesn't it show optimal? Because there is no optimal. It depends what your goals are and what your assumptions are. That's the problem. There's just a limit to what software can tell us about Roth conversions. Okay. Ben wants to know my thoughts on Vanguard trying to bring low-cost investing to private assets. It just doesn't seem necessary to me. At least for the vast majority of people, including myself. Okay, Jeff says, can you kind of walk through how to compare scenarios, specifically Roth conversions? So, sure. So we'd already done the Roth conversion stuff. So we can go back here. I created a new plan. We can walk through it real quick. So I'll just create a brand new scenario. So this lists all my scenarios. I'll create a new one. I'll just call it new Roth conversion. I'm going to import the data from the base plan. And then I want to make sure I select that new scenario. Here it is. Now my base plan, I think, already had Roth conversions in it, but that's okay. And then you enter, however you're going to do the Roth conversions, we'll use the tool. We'll use lowest lifetime tax liability. We won't worry about this because we don't need to for now. Here it is. I'll apply it to the scenario. So what that does is, if we go to money flow, well, we're already there. It puts in each of those conversions that the tool, had suggested. We can change any of this. And now, if I want to compare all the scenarios and close up some of this, I have to come down here, go back to my scenario page, and I can compare scenarios. And I'm going to compare baseline to new Roth conversion. You can actually compare up to 3 scenarios. And I can pick optimistic, pessimistic, average, future dollars, today's dollar. We'll go with future dollars. And it shows you, different metrics: net worth, future financial wellness, other things, taxes. Obviously, that's a big thing for Roth conversions. So, yeah, there you go. Hopefully that's helpful. Okay. Dave wants to know if I still like Empower and how is it different than New Retirement. So I do like Empower a lot. I haven't been using it lately myself as much. Part of the reason is simply because, so what Empower does a couple of things that New Retirement does not. With Empower, you connect your investment accounts. You can connect banking and credit card accounts as well, so it'll track all your spending. But in terms of investing, once you connect your accounts, it shows you your asset allocation. It shows you your expense ratios. It allows you to project the impact of investing costs on your wealth over time. And New Retirement doesn't do that. It also has, I think, a reasonably good retirement planner. It's not nearly as comprehensive as New Retirement, but I think if you're 20, 30, 40s, you're years away from retirement, I think Empower's retirement planner is pretty darn good. once you actually start, rolling up your sleeves and, okay, we need to figure this out because it's getting real. That's when you start to drill down on things like Roth conversions and what kind of Medicare you're going to get, and IRMA, and all of these things that New Retirement does, and Empower just doesn't give you anywhere near that level of granularity. But you can compare scenarios. I mean, I can pull it up real quick. Maybe. Let's see here. See if I can log in. So this is a demo account as well. And if you go to the retirement planner, you can see I've got a number of scenarios. And there are, there's a lot you can do with this planner, including spending goals. If we open this, you can put in a bunch of different things. There are some assumptions that you can control: effective tax rate, inflation rate, life expectancy. So, there's different income events that you can put in, including a pension and working during retirement. Maybe you're going to get an inheritance at some point. So, and then you can compare plans to change some of those assumptions and so forth. So I think, and you can compare scenarios. So there's a lot you can do with this. Again, it doesn't give you nearly the level of detail that New Retirement does, but if you're, I don't know, 10 or more years away from retirement, you may not need all of that level of detail. So, yeah. And then, if you really want to keep an eye on your asset allocation, New Retirement's not going to do that right now. Empower could. It's not the only tool that does that, of course, but it's one of many, but it's free. So, I think a lot of people, and graphically, it's, as you saw, it's pretty easy on the eyes. I mean, they've done a good job, I think, of the user interface. Okay. Tommy wants to know, trying to lower RMDs, got 13 years. You can do large Roth conversions up front versus lower conversions that save taxes. When is the crossover? I don't know how to figure that out other than sort of trial and error. I mean, you can run the Explorer, Roth Conversion Explorer, New Retirement, as I showed you, and maybe set it to a certain tax bracket, because that's what you're going to do, right? You're going to say, okay, my best guess is when RMDs kick in, I'll be in the whatever tax bracket. It's going to, RMDs kick in, I'm going to go to a higher tax bracket. If I do some conversions before then, it'll smooth things out. And that's what you want to do. The one thing I'll say is if you use New Retirement, the Explorer, and you go to a tax bracket, let's say 24, it's going to take you to that tax bracket. Well, you might not want to do that. And it might not be necessary to get out of, it's not showing you here. Let's see if I can see taxes, effective tax rate. But the point I'm trying to make is if this is your RMD area, you might be able to get out of those higher tax brackets that you suspect you'll hit without any Roth conversions. You can get out of those with Roth conversions that don't necessarily go all the way up to whatever tax bracket you're modeling. And so that's why I say I think it's to some extent some trial and error. And the way you can see it is, so let's see, this has got Roth conversions in it. Let me just make sure I know it does, but yeah, it's got 16 Roth conversions. What you can do, I like to go to Insights and Taxes. Well, actually, we can see it here, I think. Yeah. What we can look at is, I look at it by tax bracket. So there's state. Depending on your state, that might be really important. But here's federal. So we're in the 25% tax bracket pretty much throughout. Yeah, 24 for the first 2 years. But then when it switches over in 2026, we're in 25% tax bracket. And so at least for that, I don't see how we could change that much, if, improve on that. Now, we could then look at IRMA, right? And see, well, could we make some changes in some years to possibly bring down IRMA while still staying in the 25% tax bracket? That's one thing. The other thing is, how much of your money is in that bracket, right? So let me just see if this is let's go to today's dollars. So, because we've maxed out to that bracket, we've got a lot more. I don't know that it matters, but you could lower this a little bit and it would raise this. I don't know how much that's going to matter at the end of the day. You could run the Roth conversion explorer that tries to come up with the lowest lifetime tax liability. And by the way, you could do that in a separate plan, right? So we could come here and say, what plan are we in? New Roth conversion. So we could say, all right, let's create a new scenario, and we'll call it Roth conversion lowest tax liability. And let's actually, we'll pull the data from base plan, and then go to that plan, go to Roth conversion, lowest tax liability. I don't remember I don't think we set this for that new Roth conversion, so we'll just leave it alone, but you get the idea. We could add it to this, apply it to the scenario, and then compare those two, right? Compare new Roth and lowest liability. Probably not a huge difference. No, not really at all. I wonder if I must have done, what? I must have, let me switch. Let me go to new Roth conversion. I must have switched that over at some point. So the other one, I did that one. So we'll go to tax brackets 24. We'll do this, but leave that alone. I know I'm kind of going through this fast, but now go to the scenarios, compare them, compare to new Roth conversion, lowest. They got to be different. Yeah, not dramatically different, but that would be one way maybe to compare and see. But at the end of the day, I still think I would never take this and just run with it. And in fact, you're going to be reevaluating every single year, right? So, but that would be one way. You could actually compare scenarios with two different Roth conversion strategies. I don't know. Hopefully that helps. So Daniel wants to know the difference between free and paid. I don't know that I can show you because I don't have the free version. But this is their pricing page. And you can see some of the differences: Roth Conversion Explorer, state and federal tax projections. To me, Daniel, to me, the only real purpose of the free version is to test out the tool at that basic level to see if it's something that would be useful to you. I think for most people, if the answer is yes, they really need the paid version. It's $120 a year, because I just don't know how, there's just too many important things in here. So I don't know. I really think you'd need the paid version. If you didn't want to pay for it, I think I would probably consider either Empower, or I think you can do a lot with Projection Lab. You can't save your data, but I think you might be able to download it. So there are still some things that they don't give you access to, like tax analysis, which I think is pretty important. But you could try the basic version of Projection Lab. Maybe that gives you a little more features than New Retirement's free version. I don't know. I have the premium version of Projection Lab as well, mainly because I reviewed it and did a video on it. I like Projection Lab. I just, at some point you just got to pick one. And I like New Retirement. So it's 8:40. I'm getting tired. I'm not as young as I used to be. Yeah, so Dan's asking about the 5-year rule. New Retirement won't account for it. That's true. I mean, I guess so. I don't know if we're talking about, there's 2 5-year rules, right? You got to open up, you got to have a Roth for 5 years, and then there's a rule on Roth conversions. But if your point is you don't want New Retirement to pull money out of the Roth, let's say you opened up a Roth 2 years ago, it's your first Roth. So you don't want it to pull money from a Roth for the next 3 years. Well, the order of withdrawals, at least unless we go in and try to change it, is taxable accounts first, traditional retirement, and then Roths. So, and you can look at this, you can see what it's pulling from. Let me do this real quick. I'm going to add an account. Let's add a Roth IRA for me. Just call it Roth IRA. We'll give it a 300 grand, whatever, blah, blah, blah. I don't want, at the moment, I don't want to, I don't want to exclude it. I don't think there's a feature where you say, well, I want to exclude it, but for just the next 3 years or 4 years. Let me pull the comment down so everyone can see. I don't think that's an option. So we don't want to exclude it. We save it, changes some numbers. And so then we can go to under Insights right here. We can go to Withdrawals. I think this is, oh, no, this is not the best place to go. I remember this. I found this confusing. If we go to, maybe it's projected net worth. I remember it's a weird savings timeline. No, savings. Okay. Yeah. I always found this odd. So under withdrawals, I would think I'd find this, but you don't. So now why is this? Oh, it's a Roth conversion. So that we can make this not quite as confusing. Let's, I'm going to delete all these real quick. Almost there. Maybe there's an easier way to delete these, but I like this one. The last conversion is $40. I wonder if that's like the last money you have in your traditional IRA. Anywho, go back to withdrawals. And so this first year, you're taking out of retirement savings. You can see there's nothing coming out of Roth. When do you start taking out of Roth? Maybe you never do. Huh. Let's we're gonna mess this whole situation up. We're just gonna delete an entire account. Delete. Problem deleting. You cannot remove traditional IRA because you are saving money. All right. Well, let's see if I can get rid of. I can't. Okay. Well, you know what we can do. There's more than one way to skin a cat. We're going to just lower the balance. And we're going to lower, we'll just stop there. Let's see if we now, why am I not seeing, what have I done wrong? Returns, Roth IRA. I know I can see at some point, say, oh, here's savings balance. Why does the Roth never go up? It's today's dollars, but let me go back to my account and see what I did. You guys have already probably figured out how I've messed this up somehow. Oh, because the rate of return is pretty much inflation. Let me go back to savings. I thought, okay, hang on. There is a place to show. It's not here, I don't think. No. No. Okay. Now we're going to have to get serious. This is a Roth, right? Yeah. Oh, wait a minute. I think I have them working. Let's get rid of the job. Let's see what that does. Withdrawals. Here we go. Shortfall. Okay. Maybe. There we go. I had the person working, so they never, again, this gets back. You guys have probably all left the live stream, so I'm probably the only one still here. The order of withdrawals, unless we go into money flows and change it, taxable, then traditional, then Roth. In this plan, I had one person working for their lifetime. So it still had some withdrawals, but it never got to the Roths. So you could see here on the plan that the first time, and you can see it over here, shortfall for Roth IRA. In fact, if you hover over here, it highlights to the left when this kicks in, and it's not until 2043. But again, this isn't going to protect you from the 5-year rule, but it would give you some idea of, whether you're going to satisfy that 5-year rule. Because if you saw Roth withdrawals early on, before the 5-year rule is met, then you could dig into your plan and figure out how you can change that. Obviously, you'd have to pull the money from somewhere else. And unless you've changed the order of withdrawals and you see Roth withdrawals early, that means you've exhausted brokerages and traditional retirement accounts, or excluded them from withdrawals, which sometimes you do and forget about, right? Because if we go back to an account, we can take any account we want and exclude it from withdrawals. And sometimes you do that for some reason, at least I have, and then I forgot about it. Whew. I think I got that one eventually. Here's a good question from main channel. Where does excess income come from? RMDs? So it can. RMDs can contribute to it, right? Excess income is just when your income, including RMDs, exceeds your expenses. So, yeah. What have I done? We're talking about Van Halen. Is Van Halen still a thing? Laurel, we actually talked about this. How does New Retirement handle future projections of inflation-protected bonds, or at least I suggested in a strategy. Let me just see if New Retirement has. They do have a help article on I-bonds. So if you search for I-bonds up here, and again, this is help.newretirement.com. Let me pull down the comment here. So I don't know that it's not, I don't think it's telling you how to set the rate of return. I'm just skimming it, but again, it seems logical to me that you would take for the pessimistic return, you would take the fixed rate and add whatever pessimistic rate of inflation you have. And for optimistic, it would be, well, see, this is for pessimistic. This is where pessimistic and optimistic can get, I guess, a bit confusing. But no, I guess not. I guess it wouldn't matter in this case, because you basically want whatever inflation rate you've put into the system, whether it's pessimistic, average, or optimistic, to be added to the fixed rate of the I bond. It's just that when you select optimistic, optimistic, if it's lower rate of inflation, just be a lower absolute return. So that'd be right, I think. It's so confusing. So Laurel, another question: when estimating future returns, can you distinguish between bonds and equities? So you can, but not quite in that way. So let's imagine, let's keep it simple. You've got one account and you've got equity, you got stocks and bonds in it. So there's two ways to do it. If we go to accounts, let's assume this is our, we'll just pick the Roth, doesn't matter. This is our only account. So one way to do it would be, okay, figure out your stock bond allocation, right? Pretty straightforward. And then come up with rates of return given that stock bond allocation, right? And they give you resources, and I can just show you some. You could use Portfolio Visualizer, or you could use, and I think New Retirement links to this, but I'll show you. If you Google Vanguard Asset Allocation Returns, and I'll show you, you get this page, and it just shows you average returns for different asset allocations. They've changed this. Here we go. You've got your stock bond allocation along the bottom, average returns, and best and worst. And I tend to put average as my optimistic because I'm kind of conservative. But the point is, you could sort of just take a blend of the stock bond allocation you have and come up with a return. The other thing you could do, let's imagine that 100,000 of this is in bonds and 200,000 are in stocks. You could create two accounts in New Retirement. You don't have to map each account in New Retirement to an account in the real world. You could have 10 accounts in New Retirement that they all add up to one account that you might have at, say, Vanguard. I mean, for each individual investment in your Vanguard account, you could create an account in New Retirement and model the return. That's a lot of work. It's a lot of updating. So that's not what I do. I do the sort of blended approach that I described a second ago. But you could, I guess you could do it that way. Yeah. I think I'm getting close to calling it a night. I'm tired. I need to retire. So Portwind wants to know about whether New Retirement models RMDs for special accounts like an inherited IRA. I don't think so, but I think they have. Yeah. So they have an article. How do I model inherited IRA withdrawals? And I don't know about like changes with the Secure Act 2.0, but you could search for that in the help as well. But they walk you through exactly how they would suggest you do it. I've worked through this before. I mean, it's not too bad, but it's, it's not like they've inherited IRA. They do have, oh, that's a name. Whoops. Let me go back. That's just the name they've given it. But they walk through how to do it. So you could check that out. That's, again, if you go to help.newretirement.com and then just search for inherited IRA. I don't know if they have anything on specifically on the Secure Act 2.0. Let's see. No. Another good source is New Retirement does have a Facebook group, and I highly recommend it. It's really good. And I'm telling you, some of the users, they know this stuff. It's incredible. And if you can ask questions, they'll help. I don't know if I'm just going to search it for Secure Act 2.0. I have inherited an IRA non-spousal for which I'm taking RMDs over my lifetime. I inherited it before Secure Act 2.0. So that doesn't address your question. But there's a number of discussions on all these sorts of issues. So highly recommend that. Dave says, Rob got a second win. Not really. I'm exhausted. I don't know why I'm so tired. So I've been doing the Peloton. I got a Peloton right over there. Bought it used. That's my cardio. And they have this thing it's training zones. And so I've been doing some endurance zone is one of the ones they call it or whatever, zone endurance. I don't know. So, but they tell you should take this test that sets your zones, but I haven't done that till today. But I've still been doing these rides, and they have 1 through 7 zones, and I've been doing mainly what they call endurance, which is kind of like a zone 2 kind of training. If you follow Peter Attia's work, not that he invented that, but he talks a lot about it. And so zones 2 and 3, and pretty comfortable. But the thing is, my bike, I bought it used, so the settings were, I guess, whoever owned it before me. But then you can take this 20-minute test ride, and then based on how you do, it will change the zone outputs, what it takes for you to get from zone 1 to 2 to 3 to 4. And so I did that today, and I'm thinking, boy, my zones are really going to go up. I don't know to what, but because it seemed pretty easy for me. 2 to 3 didn't seem that bad. They went down. I don't know. Maybe I had an off day. I'm not sure. They went down. So David wants to know about the inherited IRA in the 10 years. Yeah, again, I think if you read through that document, if you go to the help section, it'll walk you through how to do it. They don't have a separate inherited IRA account type. They have you set it up as a traditional IRA. I do all mine manually. I don't feel a need to connect my accounts because it's easy to update the balances, and that's really all that New Retirement needs is the balance. They're not giving you any details on, say, asset allocation. But they do want you to exclude the account from withdrawals because you're going to set up manual transfers for those withdrawals for 10 years. So I can show you. It's not really that bad. If we had a new account, traditional IRA for me, inherited IRA, 100 grand, excluded, and then you can set up in money flows transfers. I think I'm about to sneeze. And it would be from the inherited IRA, let's say, to your brokerage account. And in terms of the amount, I don't know if they give you help on the amount. The amount's not going to be perfect, right? Because the value of the IRA is going to change over time. But we could put in, for now, that we're going to take out it's $100,000 in my example IRA. So we'll take out $10,000 a year. It's annually. It'll start now. It'll go for 10 years, whatever that is. That's not 10 years, but whatever. And I could see the need to update this once a year. Go back to this transfer, like, based on the balance, for 2025 and forward, you might bring this down a bit, but it's probably not going to make a massive difference to your overall plan in most cases, unless it's a massive inherited IRA. I'm pretty sure what I've just walked through kind of quickly is what this article recommends, or close enough, but you can read the article. What if they give you 2 ways to do it? Oh, this is if you want to model a future inherited IRA. So and this is an existing inherited IRA. Yeah. All right, gang. Thanks for hanging out with me. It's been 2 hours. I'm going to call it a night. I know I didn't get to every question. Maybe I'll try to do this once a month. If it's useful to folks, I don't mind doing it. I enjoy it. I think it's fun. Maybe that just makes me a bit odd. I don't know. But do send me emails with your questions. I try to get to as many of them as I can. I do try to read every email. I will say, and this is a good thing, I guess, but I get thousands of emails. And so it's I do my best to try to keep up with it. But yeah, maybe we can do this once a month. I don't know. We'll see. If you use other software besides New Retirement, maybe you use Projection Lab or Maxify or I don't know, let me know. I really want to dig into Prelana. It's a spreadsheet at the moment. They're trying to convert it to an app like New Retirement. And I think it was scheduled to be ready in May, but it's gotten delayed. So it'll be interesting to see what they do there. I've reached out to them and had some email exchanges with them. I was kind of holding off on this, on trying to figure out the spreadsheet, waiting for the online app version, but I may dive into the spreadsheet. And then there's Wealth Trace is another one that I want to dive into, but I emailed the folks there, and apparently they're making some pretty significant changes to it between now and the end of the year. So my thought was, well, maybe I should just wait. Why learn it now only for it to change? But if you use other apps, I'd like to know that. And, because maybe I'll try to learn them. And then when we have these walkthroughs, it can be for all of them. I'm probably biting off more than I can chew. I don't know, but I'd at least give it a try. So anyway, thanks for joining. Have a great rest of your evening and a great week. And until next time, remember, the best thing money can buy is financial freedom. Financial freedom. See, I'm tired.